Welcome to the PinkpillRx podcast, hosted by Katie and Jay Fillmore, where we navigate complex and thought-provoking topics surrounding women with a focus on education. For shorter form content, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at Caters88 or PinkpillRx.
That's Kators 88.
If you enjoy this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review. So before we begin, I want to remind our listeners that with the potential TikTok ban on the horizon, you can always find us on YouTube and Instagram. And we're committed to keeping our community connected regardless of what happens with TikTok. So make sure to follow us on these platforms to stay up to date with all of our content. And hey, if you love what we do and want to support our mission, consider joining us on our Patreon for $1 a month. And your contribution, it helps us continue bringing you this content. Also, if you have a story you'd like to share with our listeners and followers, please email us at pinkpillrx@gmail.com. All stories are shared anonymously unless specifically stated that you want your name included. As a reminder, we're your hosts, Katie and Jay Fillmore, and we're thrilled to have you join us for another eye-opening episode.
Remember when we talked about the Harvey Weinstein case?
A while ago, yeah.
Yeah, and he was basically vindicated from sex crimes committed in New York because too many people testified about how they had similar interactions with him. And too many people were 3 women. They brought in other testimony from other women who had had similar interactions, almost like as a character witness kind of thing.
So establishing a pattern.
And there was a total of 3 women. And because those 3 women were allowed to testify, that case ended up getting overturned.
Like on appeal?
Yes. I don't know if it was an appeal or what it was, but it got overturned. And those charges essentially got, that trial was essentially made invalid because of that.
So did he just walk away?
Well, he has other charges against him for other stuff.
Okay.
But this was just one of the things. So there was some confusion about that. And I actually had a lawyer that wrote in to explain to me why that is, but then also give me some interesting history on this as far as court goes. So she says, a couple other interesting facets of this area of law that are sort of up your alley. So the basic rule is evidence of the defendant's character/propensity to commit crimes is inadmissible because we're concerned the jury will convict him because they think he's the kind of person who would do this, rather than really making a determination of whether he in fact did this.
Okay, that makes sense.
However, until the 1970s, most U.S. jurisdictions had the opposite rule for sex offense crimes. The defense could introduce evidence of the victim's sexual history for one of 2 purposes. Either 1, to prove consent, because if she's having a lot of sex, then she probably consented on this occasion too. Or 2, to show she is generally not credible because she is a woman of loose morals, so her testimony should be discounted.
Until the 1970s?
Yes, this was a specific evidence rule that only applied to victims in sex offense cases.
Oh, you know, freaking why that was put in the law.
Yeah.
So guys could get off from doing it.
In the 70s, most states and the federal government fixed this by passing new evidence rules that are known as rape shield laws that makes evidence of the victim's sexual past now inadmissible, except for very narrow purposes. But then some jurisdictions went even further, passing laws that affirmatively allowed character evidence against the defendant, specifically in sex offense cases only. California and the federal government both have these. New York does not, hence the Weinstein decision. So in other states, it could have been admissible because some states took it further and said, actually, yes, that is valid evidence.
Was it just California, though, and federal?
That's what she stated was California and federal.
Oh, maybe they were just examples. I don't know.
Yeah.
Man, get with it, New York.
Isn't that crazy that they used to be able to?
Yeah.
Like testify against the woman or I'm assuming it's a woman. I guess I shouldn't assume, but, statistically speaking.
Jinx.
Thank you for writing in and telling us that because that was super fascinating to me.
Whoa.
Can you talk about sexual assault by staff members in hospitals?
Like against patients?
Yes.
Okay, talk about it.
Okay. Again, data, very hard to find on this. There's so much hospital staff that you could say, oh, physicians or oh, nurses
Right.
or oh, I couldn't find that much, but I did find some interesting statistics I wanted to share.
Okay.
There's about 1 million active physicians in the United States. About 1 in 10,000 physicians, 0.95. So I'm going to say about 1 in 10,000 physicians per year are disciplined for inappropriate sexual conduct with patients, which results in about 95 cases a year. So that's like on the doctor front.
Well, and that's ones that are disciplined.
And that's one that are disciplined. Great
And
catch,
ones
man.
that are
You are
known.
really, you are on it lately. Like, you know the loopholes now.
Yeah.
According to a 2023 Joint Commission report, 43% of reported violent incidents in hospitals were sexual assaults, including rape. So 43% of reported violent incidents in hospitals in a report by the Joint Commission were sexual assaults. That's a lot.
Yeah, I pictured more like a patient being violent towards a physician or towards another patient, like in a waiting room or something, not that.
Yeah, there was a study, this was a very long time ago. This was in 1992, so a very long time ago. And this is self-admitted. So these are physicians that self-admitted. These aren't physicians that were necessarily disciplined.
Yeah.
But a total of 9% of physicians that were surveyed admitted to engaging in sexual conduct with at least one patient.
Would you say that again?
9% of physicians reported engaging in sexual conduct with at least one patient.
So you take 9% of a million.
That's in 1992, though. Like
Right.
I said, this is an old study.
There's probably less physicians in 1992. There's probably less than a million. Because the population's grown. But let's even just say it was a million. And let's say at the time, that would have been, oh my gosh, that would have been 90,000. 90,000. Now, that wasn't annually, though, right? Those just people who admitted that they'd done it before?
Yeah,
Okay, so that's a little different, too.
that is different.
But still, 90,000 doctors admitted it? Possibly not. If it was a million at the time.
But we have to remember, there's tons of other hospital staff. We're just talking about doctors here.
Right.
I had a follower write in about her ex-husband, who was a respiratory therapist. My ex-husband was a respiratory therapist that traveled the country during COVID. In 2022, I found multiple videos of my ex-husband's Google Drive of him sexually assaulting an unconscious patient who was on a ventilator in Champaign, Illinois. That's kind of close to our home, hence the gasp. It was technically molesting because there wasn't evidence of his pee going in her V. Either way, she could not consent since she was unconscious. He recorded the crime so that he could replay the videos at home and masturbate to them.
Oh, gosh.
When I found the videos, that were months old by that time, I turned him into the police. I worked with a special crimes detective for months so they could capture him and send him to jail while he awaited his trial. His bond was $1 million. Even murderers get $50K bonds, but his was so large since he was considered dangerous and moved around for work. His crime was aggravated sexual battery, a felony in Illinois. We happened to live across the border in Wisconsin, but he had traveled for work, so. I spoke as a witness during his court trial. The judge heard my ex-husband's sob story of how he has PTSD from Iraq, even though a trauma specialist confirmed that PTSD doesn't make someone commit violent crimes like that.
Right.
Because of the sob story, the judge, Randall B. Rosenbaum,
Yeah, say his name. What did he do? What was his
didn't
sentencing?
give my witness testimony any credit and literally told my ex-husband, since this is your first offense, we'll go easy on you and not give you prison time. He counted the jail time as time served and put him on probation for 3 years. He literally said that he went easy on him. It was such a slap in the face to women in general. Besides me, there were only 2 other women in the courtroom. My state witness, advocate, and the courtroom typist.
Say the judge names again. Judge name?
Randall B. Rosenbaum.
Okay, so he's the 6th Judicial Circuit Court of Illinois. whoever's listing who's in his district, vote this guy out. So it's Champaign, DeWitt, Douglas, Macon, Moultrie, and Piatt counties. So
Okay.
judges are elected in Illinois specifically in partisan elections. And there's a primary and you pick a party and everything. So this judge in the 6th Circuit Court of Illinois has to run for election and has to run, like, basically ask to be retained in a retention election. I think that's how it is on the ballot when you vote.
Okay, she continues and says, at least he's considered a felon for life and a sex offender in Wisconsin for life. In Illinois, his sex offender title is only good for 10 years. They identified the victim, but didn't tell her, since they were only 99% sure of who it was and not 100% sure. There is a woman walking around.
She has no idea.
Who has no idea. She continues and says, if you want any other details, happy to share. Wasn't sure how much was considered trauma dumping. This story should be heard by everyone. Women deserve to have men properly prosecuted. Men get away with everything.
Yeah, because, come on, this guy, I'd imagine he'd do this again.
I wonder what happened to his respiratory
Right.
therapist license.
Now, in her story at the beginning, the videos, is it just the same patient every time?
Sounds like it.
Okay. Gosh, because it's his first offense, we're going to go easy on you.
First offense, doubt it. First offense caught, most likely.
Right. And this type of crime, like, no.
You're
should be
recording
no
it.
leniency here.
You're recording it. You're in a hospital. There are people around.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a first timer.
No, it sounds like he's just going to be emboldened to do it
Sounds
again.
like you're pretty confident.
Too, yeah.
Can you talk about the amount of men who leave women when they get diagnosed with cancer?
Oh.
Women are 6 times more likely to experience divorce or separation than men are after being diagnosed with cancer or MS. 20.8% of female cancer patients experience separation or divorce.
1 out of 5. Oh my God.
Female gender was the strongest predictor of separation or divorce across all patient groups studied when it comes to illness and divorce. The highest risk factor was being a female. Do you want to know what % of men are divorced after getting a cancer diagnosis?
I'm going to guess it's a lot less than 20%.
2.9.
Yeah. So 1 out of 20. Little, maybe 1 out of 19.
Yeah. So I was curious to know about female leadership and how the numbers really shake out when it comes to females in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not a ton of females in leadership when we're talking about like CEOs, CFOs, things like that. And it's like, are they really, is it because they underperform? There's an S&P Global study where they found that female CEOs saw a 20% increase in stock price momentum in the first 24 months following their appointments.
Dang.
Companies with female CFOs saw a 6% increase in profitability and an 8% larger stock returns during the first 24 months in their appointment. Firms with female CEOs and CFOs produce superior stock price performances compared to the market average. Women-led Fortune 1000 companies, what is that?
I'm guessing it's like the top 1,000 performing companies on the stock market.
Women-led Fortune 1000 companies had averaged revenues of $26 billion compared to $20 billion for male-led companies. That's a $6 billion with a B difference.
Yeah, that's massive.
Male-led companies showed higher average profits, though, $1.7 billion, compared to female-led companies, $1.5 billion. Companies with more than 30% female executives are more likely to outperform companies with fewer women in leadership. And organizations with at least 30% women in leadership roles are 12 times more likely to be in the top 20% for their financial performance.
So why do these boards not want female CEOs?
Because I think that there's this gender bias that goes on. There's that credibility gap that's there.
Oh, right, because then the data doesn't matter if it's credibility.
It doesn't matter if it's a bias. None of the numbers matter if it's a bias. Women-owned businesses generate $2.7 trillion in revenue. There's not a comparison here. I'm just saying that that's how much money they contribute.
That's a crazy amount of money. Trillion.
From 2019 to 2023, women-owned businesses' growth rate outpaced the rate of men's.
And that includes COVID in there too,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Based on assessments with over 84,000 leaders and 1.5 million raters, which was comprised of bosses, peers, direct reports, and others, shows that female leaders show up more effectively than their male counterparts across every management level and age level.
So what do you think it is about women?
I think it's the bias.
No, I mean, like, what makes them such strong performers compared to their male counterparts?
Well, I think they're motivated.
Mhm.
Not saying men aren't motivated, but I think there's this extra motivation because I am a woman.
Yeah.
So I need to show up.
You're a minority in the field.
I have to work harder to get the same results and the same respect.
Yeah.
And I also think that they're more relational. So it does not surprise me that females leaders show up more effectively than their male counterparts across every management level and age level, because they tend to be stereotypically more relational.
Does that mean more collaborative too?
Yes, collaborative, open to feedback,
And ideas?
things like that.
Huh.
But despite all these wonderful things about women in these big power positions, we've talked about the gender wage gap before.
Yeah.
Okay. Which, by the way, in the United States is not expected to close until 2059
At the current rate?
if earnings continue to change at the rate they did between 1959 and 2015. White women are
Whoa.
projected to reach pay equality with white men. This study says 2055. The other says 2059. Do you want to know what year that is for black women?
I do, but it's probably going to be really discouraging to hear. Discouraging, on their behalf.
The wage gap between black women and white men is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
When do you think that gap's predicted to close?
2073.
2119.
Oh my gosh.
That's how far off we are.
Whoa. Jeez. I would hope the rate would accelerate with younger, more progressive generations in that area, More globalization, more access to information and people who don't look like you because of the internet.
Yeah.
Jeez.
With the wage gap, there's a wealth gap.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. It's probably even worse than the wage gap.
So globally, the most commonly referenced reports say that for every dollar a white man owns, women overall own 32 cents. This is globally.
Mm-hmm.
In black and Latino women, you want to guess how much cents compared to a white man globally?
17 cents.
1 penny.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, in 2021, they took a look at the gender wealth gap at a household level, and they found that women's median household wealth was 55 cents to every dollar of a man's median household wealth.
And that's U.S.?
U.S. Man. In the United States, more women than men live in poverty. Okay, That's not surprising. Mm-hmm. This was in 2018. So in 2018, according to this data, 38.1 million people were living in poverty. 56% or 21.4 million of those were women. Women have only 44% in their retirement account balances compared to their male counterparts. Even though women are slightly better investors than men.
Oh, I believe that.
However, they're less risky.
Yeah, I believe that too.
So because they're less risky, this is contributing to that.
Yeah, there's probably a lot less loss, but also less massive gain.
Mm-hmm. So you might think, well, you know what? Women probably spend more money, and probably because there's this stereotype of women being shopaholics and things like that, right? Oh, these women must be in debt or have bad credit history or something that affects their wealth.
Okay. I mean, I thought it was the pink tax, personally.
Did you? Yeah.
Crossed my mind. Not the only factor, obviously, but...
Studies show that women are more cautious when shopping. Men are more likely than women to report enjoy shopping for themselves.
I believe that. I think we're bigger spenders. I don't think we look at a budget as much.
And a higher rate of men, 51%, have fallen into debt due to non-essential spending. So younger generations are more likely to enjoy personal shopping. Do you know who leads the march in that?
No.
Millennial men. 83% of millennial men report that they enjoy personal shopping.
I mean, I enjoy it.
I mean, I don't think it's bad to enjoy personal shopping.
do it a
I'm
whole
just
lot.
saying it's interesting because I do feel like there's this automatic bias that comes in as like, well, there's a reason. There's a reason beyond the wage gap and the pink tax that women don't have money.
You know what I hate about that assertion? If you really cared about women, that would not be your go-to position. It would be, I don't want that for anyone. Like, I don't want that for any of them. This is a problem.
Yeah.
Versus like, oh, I'm just going to blame it at women are making some type of poor decision. Like, if that's like in the comments, like yesterday on Instagram, which is a different animal than TikTok. TikTok is a lot more positive.
But if you're from Instagram, we love you.
Yes, and
you're
I'm
not
sorry,
the people making these comments.
You've got to
obviously, if you're
beaten
here.
up in these comment sections. Somebody was like, "Oh, it was a video you just posted from a previous podcast episode," and I was talking, and it was about on TikTok how the makeup of the users
that
was,
women dominate.
Yeah,
I think it
TikTok.
was like 56%.
It was 50, I thought it was 54%
50?
to 46%.
Okay, fine. 54% to 46%.
Which sounds like small percentage numbers, but when you look at the actual raw data, it was like 13 million people, which is like it's LA, New York, and Chicago basically put together. But the person in the comment section was not like, I don't know if it was a man or a woman. I'm assuming a guy, but I don't know. I couldn't tell from the profile. Yes, I clicked on it. I wanted to see who I was talking to. And oh no, you commented back and forth with them.
Well, I just said that that's statistically significant because again,
yeah,
when we're talking about these numbers, percentages might sound small.
Yeah, and then you didn't respond because you went to bed, and then the person said, "Oh, no response. I unfollow." And so I commented because I got pissed off about it. And so I said the New York, Chicago, LA thing and gave actual numbers. But I'm like, your first instinct is like, I don't like that data. Let's find something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Versus, I don't like that data. I'm going to sit with the cognitive dissonance of it and actually be thoughtful. Versus, no, I don't like that. Got to be something wrong with it. Versus something being wrong with me and how I feel about it.
Yeah, the automatic, yes, it's based on your feeling.
And guys are always the ones that say women make decisions too much on feelings. They shouldn't be CEOs and presidents. Obviously, women perform better as CEOs, as you cited to me. But also, our guys, I mean, and I've been this person before too, so I can speak from experience. Like, your feelings get hurt when you hear women talk about things that you feel like are anti-men. But are they? Or is it just like that you don't like the data sometimes too? Like, I'm sure sometimes women are ranting about men, and it's very anti-men versus anti-patriarchy, which there's a difference. But like, how many times have I or other men heard data about women that felt uncomfortable and instead wanted to say, well, there's got to be, how was that study conducted? Or, well, that's not statistically significant.
Suddenly you become a scientist and you need to know what the controls were.
Right. You become a scientist and a statistician instantaneously, which I take issue with. I have a math degree. Come on.
You transform when you get into the comments section.
Yeah. Well, then also, like, I've known plenty of guys where, like, via text or in comments talk one way, but in person, much more agreeable. But you can hide behind a screen and say whatever you want.
Men are more likely to splurge on luxury or high-end items. 61% reported that they would do that. 43% versus 43% of women.
Mm-hmm. You said women. It sounds like women shop more often for other people.
Yes.
Than men do.
Yes. Also, there's this odd phenomenon. Women are less likely to be approved for a loan, and when they get approved, they get lower amounts of the loan or higher interest rates than their male counterparts with the same debt to income ratios.
That 100% contributes to the wealth gap, because the biggest way to grow wealth is through real estate. What do you need for real estate? Mortgage loans. And if you can't get approved for as high of amount, or you get a higher rate, or you just don't get approved at all, you're not going to be able to build wealth.
And men across the board have higher debt than women in all categories except for student loans, ironically. Oh. So the women who got an education. It's fewer than 1 in 4 women, 23% of women, report that they're doing well or very well financially. While more than 1 in 3 men, 34%, say the same. One reason for the disparity could be that more women say they're unable to save money regularly. 37% of women say they're unable to save versus 22% of men.
And it's probably a combination of take-home pay and having to buy extra things because you're a woman.
Now, that is on average. But the millennial cohort, 43% of women say they're unable to save versus 19% of men.
Whoa. Why is it so much bigger with millennials? I want to just emphasize, like, from what I know, the best way to build wealth if you are not wealthy is through real estate, which with massive inflation has become a huge problem. That's a big hindrance to women accumulating wealth, which then makes sense as to why the stats are the way they are, with women's net worth and men's net worth being very, very different on average.
So you got to think too that women weren't like able to independently get a loan and buy a house independently until 1974. Hundreds of years men have on women when it comes to wealth accumulation via real estate.
White men.
Yes, I'm sorry, white men. I need to specify that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our last one.
Thank God for today. It's the last one.
Another follower wrote in and said, I was wondering if you'd consider looking into and covering public transportation and airport/plane specific sexual assault. This is a personal story of hers. She has her own experience. And it was at an airport. I had a long wait for my flight and was on my own, so I set myself up on some chairs in a corner. There were other people around me, but it was quiet enough for people to be lying across maybe 3 chairs. And other people had 3 chairs set up, so I did the same and figured I'd just listen to some music and maybe have a nap to pass the time. I was drifting in and out of sleep when I felt someone touch me, and I sat up to see a man standing over me. He had his phone in his hand and was gesturing with it, asking me something. I wasn't fully with it, so I said, sorry? And he repeated, asked me if I had a phone charger. I looked at his phone and said, no, I have an iPhone, still not really understanding what was going on. He sat right next to me really quickly and hugged me so that his hand fully grabbed one of my breasts and then asked if he could get a selfie with me. I said no. I started grabbing my stuff as quickly as I could, and he very quickly hugged me to grab my breast again. I was smiling and being polite to get myself away from him. Then I walked to the nearest door and walked outside, bursting into tears. I was completely on my own in another country and freaking out, so I smoked a cigarette to calm myself down and walked around the outside of the building to enter through a different door and find security. The first one I saw was a woman, and I felt relief, and that didn't last long. I blurted out to her what had happened and pointed to where it had happened. She asked me where he was now. I said I didn't know, explained what I'd done, and she touched me. Please never touch someone that has just disclosed they've been assaulted without their explicit permission. And she said she was really sorry, and I quote, next time it happens, come and find us right away. She then kept asking if I would be okay while continuing to touch my arm. So I said yes to get away from her. I still had a long wait at the airport ahead of me, so I spent the rest of my day making sure I was around lots of people at all times, constantly on the lookout for the man that had assaulted me. What's really sad is that in hindsight, all the people that had been lying around me earlier had been men. It hadn't even crossed my mind. I hadn't even registered it until I went from being a person at an airport to being a woman on her own. Thank you both for everything you're doing. Your daughters are so lucky to have you as their parents. Lots of love from the UK. First of all, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And how terrifying that had to have been.
Yeah.
And then, to just be told, come get us next time it happens, as if there is a next time or if it happens a next time.
Nothing preventative.
I had a hard time finding data on like assaults that happen to passengers, but there's a lot of data on assaults that happen on airplanes. So the FBI investigated sexual misconduct on airplanes and found that it increased by 60% between 2019 and 2023.
Whoa. Why? Whoa.
Regarding flight attendants specifically, 68% of flight attendants experienced sexual harassments during their flying careers. 35% experienced verbal sexual harassment from passengers in the last year, and 18% experienced physical sexual harassment from passengers. It's important to note, though, that these statistics are underrepresented most likely, and the true prevalence of sexual assault on airplanes, as many cases go unreported. Only about 7% of flight attendants who experienced this abuse in these studies reported sexual harassments to their employer.
Whoa, that's a giant spike in a short period of time. That's huge.
As a reminder, if you have anything you want to share with us or any stories that you feel would be beneficial for our listeners, please feel free to email us at pinkpillrx@gmail.com. And all the stories will be shared anonymously unless specifically stated that you want your name included. I appreciate everybody who's already sent in stories. I read them. I save them. I try to respond to them. I'm still working through a bunch recently here that I'm still trying to respond to. So hopefully if you have emailed a story and haven't gotten a response yet, hopefully you'll get one soon.
I hope for those of you listening, something was intriguing or sparked a curiosity, or you felt affirmed or challenged. Stay educated. Take the pink pill. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.